Well, good morning. This is my evidence tree. I'm going to talk about the transformation of the society in the era of globalization. For this one, I'm going to first define some aspects terms that are used or that were created in this period of time, like globalization, digital era, terrorism, and unipolar world. But before we freak out, let's define and see where we find them. And the first one, the other one, is a process of interaction and integration among the people, companies, and governments of different nations. A process driven by international trade and investment and aided by information technology. This process has effect on environment, on culture, on political systems, on economic development and prosperity, and on human physical well-being in societies around the world. But why did the globalization emerge? Well, the necessity and the lack of opportunities in some countries, like also Mexico, also the need of expanding the market all over the world, also the world wars, Cold War and the Great Depression disrupted in significant ways the ongoing globalization process through much of the 20th century. This we can see, for example, when the Mexican people immigrate to United States for better opportunities. Terrorism. Well, there is no defined definition, and it's like this one surprised me because there's no like an agreement between the countries for the meaning of terrorism, but I find in the dictionary that it refers to the use of violence and threats to intimidate or coerce, especially for political purposes. But what caused the terrorist attacks of the 20th century? Where there are two main causes of terrorism. The first one is social and political injustice. This means that people choose terrorism when they are trying to right what they perceive to be a social or political or historically wrong, when they have been stripped of their lands or rights or denied this. And the other one is the belief that violence or its threat will be effective and usher in change. Another way of saying this is that they believe that violence means justify the ends. Many terrorists in history state sincerely that they choose violence after long deliberation because they felt they had no choice. For example, it's like they don't listen to us, well, let's use violence. Unipolar world. This means that unipolarity is used to describe the power structure when one superpower dominates alone. In this case, it's the United States. But how does the end of the Cold War relate with unipolar world? Well, the end of the Cold War meant that the previous decade superpower rivalry now had ended. There was no longer the traditional East and West. Now it was only the United States. At least not the way it had been earlier in the 20th century. It led to the unipolarity, having USA as the only superpower and still. And then we have the digital era. This is characterized by technology which increases the speed and breadth of knowledge turnover with the economy and society. The evolutionary theory, as an explanation of the system we live in, states that sustainability relies on the knowledge turnover. The digital era can be seen as the development of an evolutionary system in which knowledge turnover is not only very high but also increasingly out of the control of humans, making it a time in which our lives become more difficult to manage. But how does the digital era influence the society? Well, we all know that the technology is all around us. It sounds bad, but we can live with it. Politicians, socialists, industrialists, and educationalists alike recognizing that technology lies at the very heart of society. The critical role that technology plays in the development of society is stimulating not only the economy but society's socio-cultural values, rather than being merely a tool of society. However, it refers to a technological determinism. But not everything is bad. There are many technologies that are available today to facilitate the learning process. For example, all the devices, the smartphones, the computers, the laptops, the iPads, all of that make easier the process of learning. Also, there are a lot of applications. Well, we know that applications there are not only Facebook and Snapchat that are mainly for entertaining purposes, but we have also for example, even Blackboard. It's an application that helps us a lot in our learning process, and there are also calculators, graphics that make easier understanding some things, but we don't have to for example, lead to laziness for doing this process. They are only a tool that help us, not that make all the work. Well, our world is constantly changing, and in order to apply or to see where those terms were used, we have our timeline. The first event is the dissolution of the Soviet Union in the 1991. The bad economy combined with the Gorbachev hand of approaches of its acceptance lead to its separation. We all know that it separate, and when they separate, they lead to the unipolarity that we already saw. And well, they were two superpowers, and now there is the United States because of this dissolution. The other one is the creation of the Internet for public purposes in 1992. A group of students and researchers at the University of Illinois developed a sophisticated browser they called Mosaic. Well, they as a result, companies of all kinds hurried to set up websites on their own. This can be, for example, for the globalization. We can also enter now, for example, eBay. We can approach products of other countries with a single click, and this we can see globalization. Another is cloning of dolly. In 1996, the dolly sheep is known as the first mammal to be cloned for an adult cell. It's by far the world's most famous clone. This, for example, shows the great increase of technology and science that we have already reached, but also we're entering into other aspects of creating life that it would be very helpful. The next is the terrorist attacks on September 11 in 2001. The United States, there is a mistake, but it's 2001, was attacked by an Islamic terrorist group called Al-Qaeda. He hacked 4 passenger planes and used them to weapons crash into buildings. This we can see, well, the terrorism, that they use the violence in order to approach their goals. The next one is a smartphone boom in the 2007. Well, this start first. Well, since many years ago there were phones, but the one who led to the boom of the smartphones was the iPhone. And we all know that this makes us easier, well, for example, the learning process and that, but also makes us made us have a dependence in these kind of tools. Then is the financial crisis in the 2008, when the world economy faced its most dangerous crisis since Great Depression in 1930s. This is what I mean when I say that we have to learn what happened in the past in order to avoid it in the present. For example, in here, and also we can see here the unipolarity, because the USA was having problems with the economy, so all the world around had problems too, because if he's bad, all is bad. here for the conclusion, the world is constantly changing and many new terms like globalization, terrorism, etc. might scare us, but that's why we need to study the history of the world and identify when they started and why, in order to be aware and then also be aware of the consequence they may bring. Thank you.